Fellas, welcome back. Both you guys have been on the podcast from before. Kedric's been on several. Emil, you're on a live one. We did a live one. That was pretty good. People really like those live podcasts at the World Championships. They went well getting all the 93s. It was difficult on my end because my schedule was crazy. If I wasn't commentating, I was live podcasting. And like commentary is obviously live. The podcasting was live, and I like it because there's something almost never edit a podcast, but when you're live, there's something about it. There's no takebacks, there's no redos.
Yep.
Whatever you said
The
is out
real
there.
emotion. The real emotion for your body.
It's yeah. There's like a weird lingering about it. And it's even different when you're on a live stream commentating. You're like, I can't believe, because I swear, I don't swear a heck of a lot, but I swear. And I've never sworn on the air by accident. And you get surprised. You're like, oh, like crazy things will happen on a live stream. For like almost 10 years, I've been commentating and never once did a single swear word slip out by accident. That's crazy. It's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen. At some point, I'm gonna drop a F bomb, and hopefully it's hopefully it's not a sub junior world championship with some 14-year-olds and I'm dropping F bombs by accident. But anyways, it is what it is. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on. Let's talk about. I mean, we got a lot to talk about, but World Championship, Sheffield coming up. Our thoughts on worlds in general, the 93s in general. Tycho returning, looking sensational in training. That's exciting. Juwan Garrison apparently exiting, and we'll talk a little bit about that and the controversy around that. Gavin crossing over 900 kilos. The battle it's going to happen at U.S. Nationals. Battle that's going to happen at Sheffield. Talk about how you guys linked up and started working together, as well as some of your other athletes, Kedric, because your boy Kyoto just had a phenomenal showing at the Asian Powerlifting Championship, 725. And he's got people talk. That's directly going to impact Sheffield, even if he's not going to be there. I was talking to your other client, Shell, actually. And Shell's like, yeah, it's going to make it a little tougher. I might have to do 800. We'll get both your guys' opinions on that and how that it might impact it. But we got a lot to unpack here, don't we? Should we take it back to what should we take it back to? Should we start with Sheffield? We could go back to Worlds in a minute. Should we talk about what's happening right now?
Yeah,
What the
I think
hell?
Sheffield's great. The
Huh?
the hype
Sheffield.
the hype is on Sheffield, so we can start with that.
The hype is on Sheffield. Well, Emil, how are you feeling, sir? How is training going for you? How's the body holding up?
So thank you for invitation first.
Yeah, for sure.
I will try to my best with English because it's not my first English. But yeah, for preparation for this Sheffield, everything is going great. We try new things with Kedrick, uh, like 3 times deadlift per week is
Oh
something.
wow.
Yep, we have a big goals. Yeah, just implementing one deadlift in the week, and everything is going great. I feel great. Body is feeling great, very good. I don't have any issues for now, and yeah, uh, Kedrick can give more information.
So 3 times a week, Kedrick. Is that why the bump in deadlift volume?
I think that, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel that when we look at the way we can kind of like progress certain lifts, there are certain elements that we have to progress, right? Whether that's a technical element, whether that's, just exposing to more like volume accumulated over time, or, maybe exposure to certain like high intensity works just for uh to get more practice. So I think because the way, Emil we, the, and I, Emil and I, we have been working together since the first Sheffield, right? Maybe we can talk about that later and how we started. We have consistently had to deal with certain back issues, right? And even up to today, we are still trying. We haven't really found a solution, right? So we're trying to find workarounds, and essentially the way Emil gets his back issues is primarily from squats. But if his back is flat up during squats, it is almost likely that his deadlift will be impacted, right? Which means that for someone like Emil, he cannot do SBD days, right? Even like if you want to practice it as well, we won't be able to do like SBD days, especially in the sequence of squat first bench then deadlift, because basically the bar placement of the squat impacts Emil's back, right? So in order to like kind of like distribute the loading of the deadlift and the squat, right? One of the deadlift days has to be slightly lighter, right? And after a while, I think that to progress the lift, you can only get by with so many like light sessions, right? So, at least my thought is just to be like, okay, cool, like instead of making the sort of like light session moderately heavy in terms of load, right? Why don't we think of it from the perspective of why don't we split that session into two, right? And then obviously we just have to space it enough and make sure that the third session is not too taxing. So that is kind of like the thought process behind it. Whether it will work or not, we don't know, right? But I think that the opportunity to try it is exciting, right? I think that the way powerlifting, uh, powerlifting is quite a sort of like a static sport, right? You squat, you bench, you deadlift. It's not rocket science. It's not team sports. It's not even like sprinting, right? I think like the complexity of sprint training, even though Usain Bolt runs like 9.5 seconds, and that's all they do, is much more complex than powerlifting. But so it's a little bit exciting to try different things when it comes to powerlifting training, and see how it goes. So I I can't really say that this will work or not, but I think that going through the process, and obviously Emil being willing to try it, gives us a little bit more room to play with new ideas.
Is it kind of scary with Sheffield around the corner to be playing with new ideas, or is this you got to take the gamble and see what happens? Is it an issue that had to be addressed regardless?
I think
What do you?
at the end of the day,
So go ahead.
obviously I'll let Emil chime in, but for me, I think at the end of the day, it's something that we would have to address eventually. I mean, it's not like we are doing it right now. We've been doing it like close to a block now, which means that if we do decide to bin it, right, we would bin it. Especially the last couple of weeks, going into Sheffield, because one thing that you will notice is that doing more work would obviously incur more fatigue, right? And if we cannot strike that balance, then the ability to recover would subsequently bleed into other days. So I think having a try further away from the competition gives us some insight whether we want to keep it or not. Uh, and if it doesn't work now, right, post Sheffield to Worlds, that's like what, 5.5 months. Then there's some time to fine tune it if we still think it's a worthy idea to pursue. But yeah, that's just from my perspective. Emil, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good idea to try, but if we don't try, we always lose to find answer it's work or not.
I
I
mean, you know
I'm
what?
I'm
Sorry, go
open
ahead.
to everything
Yeah, I
and
mean, you know what?
really trusted about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? There's never a good time when you're at your level. There's always something else. There's always a big competition. Like if you waited for a time when there isn't a big competition, you're always going to have a big competition.
Yep.
You feel like, Emil, from competition to competition, do you ever get battle fatigue? Because you've been at Worlds, Euros, Sheffield, Worlds, Euros, Sheffield. Like you're always in the middle of the mix and right at the top. Do you ever feel like you need some time off, like Kaiko did, where he took some time off and now he's back stronger than ever? Or are you like, no, you're totally fine with this kind of tough schedule?
I think it's good idea to take a rest a little bit. Take a rest like a quick workouts like for not a heavy competition lifts for a fair month. It's good for mentally and physically because I have issues with my back. Started when I pushed post South Africa meet, and I continued to push it my body, and that's because my back is injured because of that. So I think it's good idea to train smart It's not year around pushing your body. It's take a rest sometime. And when you have a time for push it, do it.
What do you think, Kedric? This is
This is
quite
the,
the
I think this is the longevity for your body, for your training career in general.
What are your thoughts on this, Kedric? You've got some athletes here, from Emil to Kyoto to you have several athletes that are in all these big high profile competitions. And in terms of, some people like Heiko have stepped back, took a little time off, and now I mean, he's going to be out longer than a year by the time he reappears, but it's done wonders for his body. And he's talked about how battle after battle, there's something about mentally the fatigue of always having something else. Like as soon as you're done at world championships, the drums start beating for Sheffield. As soon as you're done, nationals, the worlds are beating for worlds. Like the drums are beating for worlds. And it becomes like the pressure mentally is there, as well as due to that, you're right back into the fire when it comes to heavy duty training. And some of this training is starting to beat up some of their bodies.
Yeah, 100%. I think with newer information coming out, people can manage sort of training load better. I think if we go back into the day, in the West Side Day, and if people have watched the West Side documentary, they said, I would trade off 10 kilos of my life just to put 1 kilo on my total. That kind of mindset. It's very different. It's like every
You
session
don't
we go,
say
we just go crazy. Yeah, one of the lifters that was interviewed basically said something like that. I'll trade off like 10 years of my life, which they probably uh trade off more, right? Based on the crazy things they do and the performance enhancing drugs that they consume. And training methodology and at least the approach to training, has changed, and that kind of like allows lifters to push a little bit more, right? But I do think that spacing things out is actually important. But I think the it's just inevitable that the more popular the sport is, the more competitions, the more big competitions there will be, right? Prior to Sheffield, there was no that the only big competition you have would probably be IPF World Championships and the regionals, which is like Euros, Asians, NAPFs, right? And then now you have Sheffield, right? And then this year you have World Games, so there's like four large competitions. I think that the ability to cope with that pressure back to back is really it's not something that everyone can do, and but I do think that the ability to maintain a relatively healthy state is getting better in terms of access to training information, access to expertise outside the sport, like physiotherapy, physical therapists, physios, right? All this is important. Like, we talk about Chow now and how he's like hitting, you know, close to 800 plus, right? Potentially at a 66, which is unheard of. And the things that we all know, like Chow is a talented lifter, and if you run the hypothetical and said that, oh, if he wasn't this beat up, right, could he have done more, right? We know the issue he faces with his squats, and people will be saying like, oh yeah, you don't even. It's not like you have a really long torso or you're not really tall. Like why do you have issues so much with your squats? And that's because he's just been doing equip lifting all the time, and you're putting a lot of like heavy loading, right? And I don't know how equip lifters really train and the different methodologies of equip lifting, but you are actually putting much greater amounts of load on your body that your sort of like your body can adapt to, right? Like your tendons, right? Your muscle can grow, right? But even the rate of muscle is quite slow. But things like the strength of tendons, those kind of stuff takes even slower. It's also probably why people who take performance enhancing drugs, right, they tend to have more like, I mean, at least anecdotally, what we observe, they tend to have like more like muscle tests, like pec tests, bicep tests, or quad tests, right? Like the infamous Brandon Lilly, uh, tearing his
Oh
quad.
God, dude.
For all the young lifters out there who don't know Brandon Lilly, this exposes my age, but yeah, all of this kind of stuff, right? Uh, just tells us that your body takes time to adapt, right? And I think that if you give your body sufficient time to adapt, I think that would probably be something that is uh helpful. But I think that because powerlifting is a sport that is relatively not rewarded financially yet. People don't often talk about how do we sustain like mental approach going into competitions, because if you think about it, powerlifting in the grand scheme of things, as an athlete, you actually compete very little compared to a lot of other sports, right? If you look at the next weight cutting sport, right? Obviously not in the form of resistance training, but I think Olympic lifters might actually compete more. I don't really know what the average meet lifting the average meets Olympic weightlifters do, but if you look at combat sports, uh fighters, for example, they fight like, you know, upwards of like 5 to 10 times a year, right? And
Yeah.
that's a lot, right? So there are ways to kind of like cope with the mental pressure. But I just think that because powerlifting is emerging and growing sport, and obviously the financial backing on the sport is not as big yet. You know, we don't have, you know, Celsius or like Monster or sponsoring all the thing yet, right? And we don't have like in Vegas, we have Sheffield now, right? We don't have it in like Vegas or whatever big. I mean, technically you can have your powerlifting in somewhere in Reno or Nevada near Vegas, but we don't. It's not as big yet. People don't often think about spending money on like, oh, you know, I'm gonna spend money on thinking of how I'm gonna hire a sports psychologist to help me. You know, when I don't actually have a nutrition coach. Usually they go through the hierarchy, right? They usually hire a coach, then they hire a nutrition coach, right? Then they try to spend money on all the supplements they can take. But and then the last bit is like, oh yeah, if I have like the extra cash, maybe I'll like hire a sports psychologist before I go into competition. But while there are expertise driving the forefront of the training aspect, I think outside of training, the expertise uh, isn't as available. So yeah, that's kind of like what I think about how the overall so like trajectory of powerlifting, competing frequently, how you can deal with it, and the problems that we have with powerlifting is, I mean, the problems and obviously potential solutions that we uh, can implement with powerlifting as a sport that's kind of like growing.
What do you guys think about the new timeline on the calendar for Sheffield? It was shown it'll be in 2026. We'll have it twice, but then from there, it's just because they're moving it to November.
Yep.
How do you feel about that, Emil?
I think for Sheffield will be hard because you have awards. Afterwards, you have 3 months to prep for Sheffield, and for invitation will be a very close time to choice person to be there. Yeah, will be hard
Mm.
for athletes too because you don't have any extended off season like a now. I have 7 months from June to January. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, with 7 months, you can improve and shake the deck a little bit. So you might see a difference in totals, which is
Yep,
interesting.
yep. And crazy progress for lifters, like
Hmm.
30 kilos total added or something like that.
Hmm. What do you think, Kedric?
And I think IPF force Sheffield for changes the date. I think Q4 something like that. It's about the rules.
So it's like a progression. You do like nationals and regionals,
Yeah, yeah,
and then like regionals being like, different continental, and then worlds midway, and then Sheffield in the end type deal, which like that makes sense on the surface, but yeah, more time to add kilos to your total shakes things up a little bit. What do you think, sir?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we the way I see is that we kind of have to look at what are the purpose of these competitions. We know like Sheffield is a competition made for people to break world records, right? So I think that uh that's how I would frame things. You know, the we always view things with a lens on, and I think that the goal of Sheffield is to break a world record, right? The goal for uh going to Worlds is to win Worlds, to be the world champion. Whether you break the world record or not is a different question, right? So I think, I mean, I don't necessarily have any qualms uh, with it moving as long as you can kind of like fulfill the purpose. Naturally, it'd be more exciting, right? That you people can break world record by a larger percentage, and if you move it earlier, they might not be able to break it by a larger percentage. But the ability of a lifter to break the world record by a larger percentage would also shrink every year. You know, like Chow can break the world record by 8% this year or whatever, right? But next year, it's unlikely that he will break it by 8% again. You know, obviously there are possibilities that there are like that it may happen, but the chances are lower. Like, I mean, like I said, Agatha broke it by 10+%. You know, close to 10%, right, or more than 10%. And now she's doing it in the same weight class, right? And I think that if we look at certain projections, I don't want to speak too much about what people can do or cannot do. Agatha now will probably be looking at totaling around just north of 630, which is around 5 to 6%. So it's actually inevitable that the percentage of the world record would shrink, right? Whether that's in terms of moving the time frame closer or not. Yeah. Because essentially it's time, right? Instead of just moving, instead of the world record percentage shrinking by a year, you're just moving it earlier and it just shrinks. So you're just the time frame just gets smaller and smaller. So if you look at it from the perspective of time, I think it doesn't really matter as long as we're still keeping the goal, which obviously is to display the highest potential of lifters to break the world record. And you know, I think calendars change all the time. Euros used to be in November and December, but now they move it to March, right? And all that kind of stuff. I think with more meets, and I don't know what the I cannot, you know, I don't have a magic 8 ball looking into it and say, okay, cool. This is the meets that will be the next big thing, right? People now often think about like, oh, World Games is not a big deal, right? To most people, I mean, it is if you talk to the equipped lifters, and the fact is because the equipped lifters has gone to World Games. Who knows whether lifters would start prioritizing the World Games when it comes to uh, raw lifting after they experience the first raw world games, right? And we don't know in 3 years down, 3, 4 years down the road. I mean, I'm not saying it will happen if you go into the Olympics. If you go to the Olympics and you imagine a lifter only competing once, like every 3 years let's say the qualification to Olympics is you win the world championship and you go to the Olympics. They'll just like compete once every 3 years, try to win worlds, and then go to the Olympics, right? Then you know, and that might just be their goal. Some of them might not even want to win the Olympics, but it's just to go into the Olympics is a goal on its own. So I think that the landscape of how people participate in competition would change based on the competition. And you know, I think that Sheffield is the competition to be at. And so far, I think that shifting it a bit may impact things slightly, but yeah, SBD, Pete Spence, they're smart people. They can market it in a way. I mean, it'll be tougher, obviously, building storylines, getting lifters from around the world to build those storylines. But you know, I think SBD and Pete Spence are capable people enough to continue to keep the hype going for Sheffield, regardless of if it's in November or whether it's in January. Just don't put it on Christmas, because I think that that's quite hard for people to fly over and stuff.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be November. Here's a couple, you make a lot of good points, right? And those are the points in terms of difficulty for a big change in totals, hyping the event, etc. Although I don't know, obviously the UFC and boxing promotions often, when one UFC is over, boom, we're right into the next event. Yes, Emil made a great point in terms of dropping who the wild cards are and announcing. It's really exciting when they take their time and make people guess who's it going to be, who's it going to be. And that discussion is just building more hype. So when you finally announce who it's going to be, even when they announce alternates, when they announce Penna, when they announce Bobby Butters, like, oh, we now know the alternates even is exciting. It's a little more condensed. However, here's some pros. If you're looking at it from not just Sheffield, but a global sense of powerlifting where the IPF might like this and the federations might like this, it won't impact nationals as much, where nationals will have to figure out, now, how do we make our team? These guys aren't competing, guys and girls aren't competing head to head now. We're taking totals from two different meets a month or two apart and making rules every year depending on when our nationals line up with Sheffield. And in that impact now will be gone. In nationals returns to what we like to see, just straight up head to head. Do you win or do you lose? Did you win your national title? You're going to Worlds. Who's the best? The nationals now becomes fuller. Whereas if you could think nationals isn't going to have like Russell Orhe, that's crazy. So he's like, it's Russ. and he won't be at U.S. Nationals. He's won so many U.S. Nationals, or I shouldn't say he won't be, but he may not be. Let's see what happens. So there's pros and cons to it outside of just Sheffield. And no matter what you do, honestly, there's going to be pros and cons. It's going to be a sensational event no matter what. It's after Worlds. It's still going to be, if I'm totally honest with you, even if the records get broken by a small margin, they're still getting broken. And these showdowns is going to be sometimes an amazing showdown happens at Worlds, and I'm like, I got to run it back and see it again. And even if, like for instance, 93's 2024, I don't know if you need a huge shakeup. If you guys redid it the next week, we could have a different champion. You guys are so close. I don't got to tell you to. I mean, Emil literally had this. If you would have put $1 million on the table and said, after Emil's second deadlift, who wins today? I would have said Emil. And if you told me these guys are competing next week, it's flip a coin. All of these guys, it's that good. So whether it's 3 months or 6 months, it's good. I'm take my money. I'll watch. So it's gonna be good no matter what. Um, but so let's talk about 2024 Worlds. What are your thoughts on it now that you've had some time to look back, Emil? Are you at peace with it? Were you yourself? I know we had talked about it live on that podcast, but and it probably stung because I was fresh at the time. But how are your thoughts on it now, looking back?
So when I looking back in February, with Kedric, we did decided to do mock meet. I had give me confidence that I'm able to hit over uh, 10 kilos more over the record because I didn't have any combination science in June. Training is going well. I was able to hit 900 kilos over 3 times in prep. This is huge progress for me and confidence. Uh, for the grip for a third deadlift, I think I never had issues with the grip in training. That's why I didn't know I was having any issues with the grip. The last deadlift attempt was not feeling heavy. I think it's about 1 milliseconds to hold it more. But I think I rushed my setup probably because from adrenaline and was more a technical mistake to lead to drop.
And is it? Are you past that? At the time, it must have been devastating.
I think I drop. I'm not dropping any deadlifts in the session, but for the mock meet, I pulling 348 kilos just for a easy single RP8, something like that.
Mm. Yeah.
For a mock meet, I did 906 kilos and did pretty close for competition standards, like 2 hours in session.
Is that the one where your friend was hanging over you after the last deadlift saying somebody's got to what was he saying? It was so good.
Yes, gonna be the greatest.
Yeah. You're like you're gonna be the greatest. Somebody's got to be the best. And it's gonna be it was so good. It was such a moment.
Yep. So how I feel when I dropped the deadlift. The first I feeling very bad. We have the picture with Kedric when I hug me. It's really good memory. Um, then I was about to win that day. I was really strong in my opinion. My one goal that day is to win, but later on when the things cooled down, I give stimulus and direction to work more for this grip because it's really big issue when strength is there, but have a little bit issues when at the third deadlift always. This is the second year I miss the deadlift.
Mm. And do you view now Sheffield as a possibility to redeem yourself? You'll be right back in there with Gustav. You guys are so close each and every time. Gustav had a phenomenal 2024. Is this a possibility for redemption?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a few goals for Sheffield. I did not mention it before few minutes. For the Sheffield, the goal is they enjoy the prep, the first. They enjoy the process and try to make a show because Sheffield is a very very big meet. Because when I last time was Sheffield when I did it 2023, I was injured in the back. I was stressed due to the short term prep because I have 7 weeks, and I was worried if I able to lift in general because I can squat with the bar. And Sheffield is quite of experience for the lifters. It's not just for the viewers. I want to enjoy and be I'm thankful for the opportunity to be there. That's my goal. And if it's possible to do 900 kills, but the main goal is to have a redemption with Gustav. He is a really strong guy, very experienced. But yeah, I think I will can total 920 and 930, something like that.
Gustav is probably, in my opinion, I think, and I'm going to do a year end podcast to really look at this. But off the top of my head, before I really search division by division, and maybe after I do that, I change my mind. But right now, if you were to ask me, I think Gustav is the lifter of the year 2024 due to winning Sheffield and winning the world championships. And his weight class was sensational. It's got you, Petrie. I mean, it's a sensational weight class. From Carlos to, I mean, it was so good. So, and then obviously we all know how tough winning Sheffield is. Off the top of my head, I would say. So for you to go head to head with him, if you beat Gustav, it's huge. It's huge. You would have beaten the 2024 lifter of the year in my mind's eye. So what do you think? First off, do you think Gustav is 2024 lifter of the year?
Yep, definitely. So he's a very experienced guy who is have more than 10 years for a competition. I'm the guy who is only have 6 years experience. Is less. So I think it's big motivation for me because when I see the Gustav nutrition recovery or something like that, it's really pushing me to be the best version for me.
Is he kind of like an inspirational story for you? Because Gustav actually, year after year, has been chasing an open world record, chasing the open world title. He was the junior world champion back in 2018, and he actually out totaled the open. He had a
Yep.
higher total as a junior than the open did. So everyone thought, I was a commentator at the time, and I had him on the podcast way back in 2018.
Mm.
And we were all like, well, he's the next king. He's the
Yeah.
next champ. Has to be. And it took so long coming in third, second, or just not making it. And then
Consistent.
consistent, keep coming back,
Yeah.
keep coming back. Injuries, whatever. And now all you other 93s can look at him and say, if he can do it, why can't I do it?
Yep. Of course. Always, I repeat myself, it's always you can push it more. You're very close each competition, and I know my time is come.
Gustav said something that was interesting to me last time he was on the podcast, and he actually got emotional. And he said 2024 is probably the first year he truly felt proud of himself. And I was shocked because while the other years he wasn't winning the open, he was right in it. He was winning medals. He was pushing it right to the end. I mean, for sure, I would have been proud. And I'm sure Sweden was proud. And a lot of people were proud, but I was surprised. But to him, he felt okay, good. He was doing good, but he was never quite showing everybody how good he was, never quite revealing his full potential until 2024. And he actually got Gustav is like stoic, doesn't show a lot of emotion. He actually got emotional on the podcast saying it. And hey, do you relate to that? Do you understand where that comes from and kind of feel the same way yourself?
Yep, actually, it's the same. Yeah, always. I will talk with Kedric too. He can mention it. I'm not only every time post meet we did like a fell notes for the what we need to work, and I'm not always proud of myself. Only you can do it more next next time, and yeah, feeling motivated for the next couple of months to push it uh, to push it to be the better.
When you show up at Sheffield, if you can beat Gustav Hedlund, who now is a legend, head to head, and you put up the totals you want to put up, would that be a moment you could be proud of?
Yeah, yeah. But after that, you need to work more because you need to protect your first place.
Well, that
So
would be the
that's
lesson, right?
so, so that's the work start after that. Some people take a rest and go down. So that's my point. You need to work to protect your place.
And that's the pressure Gustav's under right now. He won Sheffield, he won Worlds, and great. And he's finally proud of himself, and we're all proud. He's a great story. You even said, like, yeah, he's an inspiration. However, with success means you're now the guy everybody's going for. You're now the new king, and everyone takes shots at the king. And that's when the real pressure comes on. Is it possible in the 93s, when you look at like Jonathan Keiko coming back and he's doing sensational in his training, um, Gavin crossed over 900 kilos. Brendan Petrie's not going anywhere. You got a bunch of 93s coming out of US, as well as obviously Gustav, you know, and Carlos. Can't forget about Carlos. But there's guys all over the world. Is it possible in the 93s to have a reign where you just stay on top for an extended period?
It's really hard. It's really hard because it's the most competitive. One of the competitive. The other category is 83. But I think yes. I think yes. If you dominated your category, it's always you have the room for the other opponents.
Hedrick, what do you think? Who is the lifter of the year 2024 on the men's side?
I mean, if I'm biased, I have to pick someone that uh I coach, right? So Emil didn't win, so I have to pick Gustav because I do Gustav's nutrition. So I have to make a give some advertisement for team performance. So
It was
yeah,
it was Gustav because his nutrition's on point.
I mean that is what he said after Sheffield. So I don't know if he would still claim the same, but I think at the end of the day, if you look at people who like you said battle hardened, right? Those that are in the competition, name me one lifter that went on the podium this year that has been competing for the past 10 years. Like no one except Chell, right? But the like Gustav has outlived everybody this year. Like he's been doing this for so long. And I think that coming to see that come to fruition is just amazing. Just from even if you look at the hero's journey, right? The arc, right? Like that is something that uh it's just nice to see, right? Also, genuinely because like Gustav is a hard worker, he's a nice person. Like even Emil being Gustav's competitor, Emil says that this person is my inspiration. Like you can see how it tells a lot about the characters of the competition, right? I coach, I do Gustav's nutrition. I coach Emil. I told people that the battle of 93s would be the one that will break my heart, whoever wins. Because obviously being invested in the lifters, right? It's if given a choice, I mean, it's it's nice to see both lifters win, but obviously that's kind of like impossible. I mean, technically, they both had the same total, so that's as close as you can get. Obviously Gustav won because he's lighter in body weight. I don't want to say that, oh yeah, like because I do his nutrition, therefore he won on body weight. I think that's too much for me to claim. But yeah, I think that the hard work that has paid off in Gustav definitely puts him in very, very high contention to be uh the best lifter of the year for 2024, And I think like it should be a story and a lesson learned on how he achieved that because not everybody can stay in the sport for that long. Like I said, who else is there, right? Who else is there this year at Worlds besides Gustav and Chell? You know, uh, maybe something to do in the water with the Scandinavians. But yeah, so I would probably say that that
Maybe it's
that that
their nutrition
Gustav
coach.
Gustav is the yeah. I mean, that's also a common theme. I just realized that Gustav and Chell, but Chell, if Gustav is the best lifter of the year in 2024, Chell will probably be the greatest comeback if there's such a category, right? Like, which means that for a comeback, it means that he still is still in the sport, right? When people thought that he was like out of the picture, he's back, right? So I think that stories like this is nice for us to sort of like idolize, but I think that there are lessons to be kind of like learned as well, right? Besides, obviously, I'm going to try to be a Scandinavian. There are lessons we can take away from, and I think that that's the inspiration to all the other lifters out there.
Looking on Sheffield for a second here. Now we're talking about Shell. Kyoto's your client, and I wanted to get your guys both your impressions on Kyoto's performance 725. Now, we all know Shell should do more than that. His body weight's low, pretty close, talking 69 in a bit. Some of the check-ins that I'm seeing, and still his gym totals are very high, very close to 800 kilos. The last couple kilos of a cut. Here's some interesting things to glean. Okay, from the last couple of weeks of what we saw in the 6 kilo class. First off, Henna opted not to cut his water at the end. Same body weight. He's not bulking, so he's the same human being he always is. He just didn't cut water, and he does 730. And this is after a 15-hour flight, um, 8-hour time zone change, and he didn't peak for it. It's just that's why he didn't cut any water. It's like, whatever, let's just have a little bit of fun. And he did 730. Now it's kind of like, oh, what if I do a meet inside France? No 15-hour travel, no 8-hour time zone change, and I peak for it, and I just don't cut water. Well, what if I do 740? We're starting to talk like that, right? So put a pin in that. His conversation when he was on the podcast was, I need to see him make weight. And that riled up Shell. Him and Shell went back and forth in the stories. That was pretty well. Actually, Penna didn't say anything. Shell listened to the pod. He said it on the podcast. Shell heard the podcast and put it in the stories. But that was funny. So there's a bit of a rivalry there, which is good. But the point being, though, if we look at how much Penna's total dropped from a water cut only, it's kind of interesting. And this is what Penn is saying is I need to see Shell make weight. B, that water cut is not negligible. Sometimes it is. Sometimes people are the exact same in the gym as on the platform. Sometimes they're more, but sometimes just a water cut. It apparently has dropped Penna's total quite substantially. What a what do you take from what you've seen with the water cut does to Penna? And does on your side, because Kedric, you do this, does it make you think maybe Penn has an opportunity to do some changes with how he does his water cut to keep some of that total on? Or do you think, no, maybe that's just the way it's going to be? He has a drastic water cut. And do you think, looking at your client, Shell, oh my gosh, what if we have the same percentage drop? I still think he's going to be well ahead of the 66s, but perhaps more vulnerable at Sheffield, given what your other client, Kyoto, just did. I just asked you like 5 questions in one. Like, well, what are
Yeah.
you thinking?
I think one thing to kind of like frame it, I think just to switch the perspectives slightly, right? It's not how much you lose from the water cut, but it's how much you gain being heavier. You know, I think that is a much better perspective because that kind of like illustrates if that weight class is suitable for you, right? I can't really tell what how Chell would do. You know me, I would be the last to project whatever totals that someone can do, but I think that at the end of the day, if we look at the way Chell is built and we look at the way Pana is built, we can 100% say that Chell is definitely more built for the 66 than Pana, right? And based on the projection, we can probably say that it is unlikely that Chell would gain as much, right? Going up a weight class, right? So if we look at it from the reverse, I can say that I'm not saying that it will happen because like there's truth to what Pana said, right? He has to do it first. And this is the first time it has taken place. So we don't actually know how well it would go. But I think if we look at it from that perspective, when Chow makes weight at 66, right? He would have been competing at 3 weight classes: 66, 74, and 83. But if you look at it, and if he totals 800, his total moving up 3 weight classes hasn't really shifted all that much. In his training, when he maxed out in the gym, I think it was like 69 and a half, he did 825, right? 69 and a half to 69 and a half to 70 kilos, right? So he did 825, right? When we usually prepare to cut weight from worlds to 74, he's roughly around 77 to 78. So he lost roughly 8 kilos in body weight, right? But he gained 10 kilos on his total because his best total then was 815.
Mm.
That should tell you that how much weight does this person stand to get if this person move up a weight class? Because there would be a limit, right? There's a theoretical limit that people can go because at the end of the day, people say, "Oh yeah, this person is just stronger because this person is heavier," but that's not the case. If you speak to certain lifters who are once they put on too much weight, they can't deadlift, or the things that they can't even sustain that lifestyle to put on a lot of weight. I don't have to be, I'm really revealing my age here, but I don't have to remind you of Kelly Brenton, who cannot eat enough to beat Ray Williams, and he had to use artificial means that are illegal to eat enough just to put on weight, right? I think that people don't understand that it doesn't always necessarily mean the heavier you are, the stronger you would be. But I think it's more of like, how much do you stand when you are trying to gain weight? And if we compare Chell and Pana and put them two together, or even Kyoto, right? Chell will be the one who stand to gain the least as he moves up the class if you compare Pana and Kyoto relative to what they have done, right? I'm not saying that Chell will not gain any weight on their total, but relatively to what they have done, So that's kind of like the way I look at it. And I think that another thing to mention as well is people always talk about, I know you like to uh, talk about all this like face off. So I'm bringing in your greatest hits, right? Sergey Fedosenko, who's coming back to compete. People say, oh yeah, I mean, he's the GOAT. Obviously, obviously he was caught for doping back in the day, but whatever, right? Not justifying anything like that because obviously people say he's like built to do powerlifting because of his height, right? But Sergey is 4 feet 8, right? And he competes as a 59 kilo lifter, right? Chell is 5 foot, that's just 2 inches. And he competes, the highest he competes at 83 kilo lifter. So he's 2 inches taller than Sergey, but he has been 3 weight classes above Sergey, right? So that should tell you the weight class that Chell could naturally sit at, right? The difference between Sergey and Chell is only 2 inches, but the weight class difference is at best 2 weight classes, right? And at most 3 weight classes with Chell competing as an 83 before. Pana and Gavin Aiden, they're the same height. So I think like that should tell you enough which lifter stands to benefit more moving up a weight class. And I guess that's kind of like the perspective I try to look at. Yeah. So hopefully that kind of like sheds a little bit of a light on what I think about the whole weight cutting process, the height that Chell has, you know, And I think that for me, being Chel's nutrition coach, it's very easy for me to buy into the hype that social media has. And you can ask Chel, right? I don't know whether you ever have a conversation with him before Sheffield. You can tell, you can ask Chel that what my sort of like general temperament or predisposition of skepticism is towards uh the process. I'm not saying I don't believe in him, but I say I try to remain objective in the process because I need to make sure that we get him there without too much drop performance because that's my job, right? My job is to get him there with minimal performance decrement, and whatever he does on the platform, then that's up to him to execute. So I think that if I buy into the hype that, oh yeah, it'll be fine, Chel would do this, Chel would do this, he can do this, whatever, he can wake up, and just win with his openers, right? I think that my role, yes, I can think like that, right? To have faith in my lifter that they are strong enough. But my role is also to think about what happens if that is actually not the likely outcome that will play out, right? And if I don't think about that outcome, I'm kind of like doing a disservice to the people I'm working with. So yeah, those are like my brief thoughts. I think that answered maybe one, maybe two of your questions. So I can't remember what
Okay,
the other three questions are.
it's okay. I got follow-ups. Dude, you're well spoken there. I would never guess you were wearing a wife beater by the way you speak. It was the dialogue doesn't match the dress. Um, okay, so having said that, and that's very well said, actually, you make some excellent points. All joking aside, with they're not the same. Pen and shell, they aren't the same at all. And you're probably right. There are certain lifters that would greatly benefit if they add weight onto their frame and they're fighting against, and other lifters where the gain they're going to get. I mean, you might even say Shell could have done this a long time ago. Although he broke a world record in deadlift on 83, broke world records of 74. And if he breaks more in 66, my goodness, the resume is absolutely phenomenal. So if he did it a long time ago, you're also going to have lost some of those accolades, which make him special. So easier said than done. But real quick, then with Penna, with what you've just gleaned on this, and I think I'm in agreement. What would you say you do there? Obviously, Penn is a two-time world champion in the 66s. Is there something that you could do and you don't know his weight cut procedure? But when you look at the surface and you see the drop in performance, which isn't unsubstantial, 730, and honestly, I think if he does it in France next time, which he's going to in 2025, he's going to do another one in France without a water cut. I would totally expect him to hit 740. That's a considerable amount more. Is there something you could do to his water cut you think that could bring his total on the platform closer to his total in the gym? Or do you think for a guy his frame, that's just going to be the price he's going to have to pay and it's going to be very difficult?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's multiple factors that goes into it. Personally, I don't really know too much about how he cuts weight or water cut. He might be already doing all the things right, and for someone experienced as him, I think that he is. But I don't know if there's anything that we can do specifically. I think at the end of the day, what as much as this is the thing that I study and do, a water cutting process is very much an art as it is a science, right? Like I said, the background of water cutting come from like fighters, right? Combat sports. And a lot of the literature in combat sports is actually not well controlled studies. The mechanisms of water cutting is actually not well explained as well. It's just hypothetical. There's only one study so far that actually looked into it. Because a lot of times, what we try to do so forgive me for going a little bit too sciencey, right? There's something called like ecological validity when it comes to science, meaning that how well does it represents the real world in competition versus something that you do in the lab where it's a well-controlled experiment. So when you do something in the lab that's a well-controlled experiment, you might be able to tease out the mechanisms or the proof of concept that you're trying to actually sort of like explain, right? Because you minimize the variables. But when you go to competition, like the ecological validity, right? It's a representation of the real world, but because of things like uh the competition arena, the crowd, right? Whether you're at home or you're away, right? How you feel going to that, all that's not really controlled for. So when it comes to combat sports, the typical way they do studies is they say tell lifter, right? They either go to the meets, right, and then they get their weight from the lifter, and then they see their weight where they regain, before they weigh in again, 24 hours, because lifters have combat athletes have 24 hours, and then they see what their performance are. So it's kind of like an observational, they are just observing what's happened. Or another way they do it is say, I want you to make weight, right? I want you to lose like 7% or 5% of your weight. I don't care how you do it. Then make weight, right? And then they will regain their weight. They also don't like specify what you're gonna eat. They just say just gain back your weight to X amount, right? And then they look if there's any relationship between weight loss and weight regain and competitive success. But all this is not really controlled, right? But when you do it in a lab, you don't actually have the real world measure of performance because they are not fighting, So there's always that like discrepancy between the studies that has been done, right? So in terms of the actual mechanistic studies that are trying to explain or elucidate the mechanisms behind water loading, there's one, and that was done in like 2018. So there hasn't really been any done because the things that measuring a lot of this kind of stuff, like the hormones are not easy, right? And you need also a large sample size to measure, which means that you need to get hormonal you need to hormonal readings in a large population who are ideally elite as well. So water loading, water cutting is very much an art as it is a science. So I can't say whatever Pana is doing is right or wrong, because I think that would be a little bit too hubristic and proud of me to say that. But I believe that whatever he's doing has been sort of like refined over the years for himself. That is the art part. He know what's working. And maybe this is also my bias trying to say that, maybe he should just move up a weight class, and I've expressed my views before on your podcast of people staying in a lower weight class versus moving up. I think moving up a weight class opens a new opportunity for you, especially when you are bordering the late 20s, early 30s, right? That age, right? When like look at Taylor Edward, right? Moving up that weight class opened up the new opportunity for him. And I think that hopefully with Chell coming to the 66 and absolutely obliterating things, the 66 lifters can actually think about moving up because Kyoda and Pana are like really, really too tall for the 66 class. They both cut relatively the same amount of weight. They're relatively the same height. So hopefully, I think people moving up a weight class, they have like the hesitation because they're like, oh yeah, 74 there's Perkins, but now 66 there's Chell. So you just have to pick your battle. Do you want to go against that, or do you want to try and move up, or maybe now that Taylor is moving up, Tim Monigatti has moved up to the 83s, right? Kelly Johansson moved up to the 83s, right? There's only I think two spots in the 74, right? That from the podium at Worlds, right? The Chell has moved down, so there's Perkins, and then now Fan Chunxia who would I think be competing tomorrow as well in the Asians. So there's like technically one spot free for the podium, and maybe the first 66 lifter to move up would actually get that podium spot. So obviously there's other lifters as well. Like Joshua Wright from Germany, right, who is already fairly lean. Obviously that the 74 classes are also having a lot of lifters. So I think that in terms of how that would kind of like change for Pada is I think moving up the weight class would be the most beneficial because at the end of the day, Pana has the ability to grind, right? And maybe if he doesn't cut, right, he has a greater ability to grind, and then therefore, like I said, this is all hypothetical. I might be completely wrong, right? So Pana would be able to get, let's say, anywhere from 7.5 to like 15 kilos just by grinding, right? And let's just say he does a cut and his body is more fatigued from the cut, then he loses that gap, right? And we've seen what Pana has done, right? It's reasonable to assume that that's within the range because back at nationals, right, before that he did what's like 7:12.5 or 7:13, right? I think he did 7:13 in France nationals, and then he did 7:30. So yeah, that's 17 kilos, right? Roughly within that 7.5 to 15 kilo range. From obviously I would say that he got stronger or whatever, but there's definitely that impact that can hit Pana, right? Or anybody for the matter that maybe doesn't belong in the weight class, and I use doesn't belong very, very loosely.
Emil, let me get your opinion on this. I know, two-time world champion as a 66. However, he did 7:30 without a water cut. That's just no water. If he does a competition at home, maybe we're looking 7:40. And to Kedric's point, he's right. There's Perk, who's at around 850, but in 66s, Shell might be around 8. And if he moves up, let's say he needs 800 if he's going to beat Shell, he could do 800 and maybe come in second to Shell, or he can do 800 and maybe come in second to Perk. But his best pathway to 800 is probably to stop cutting,
Yep.
bulk up. And imagine Penna, who's already pretty jacked, decides, you know what? I'm going 74 kilos. I'm smashing food, smashing weights, getting a nutritionist. He's already around 730, 740. Do you think as a 74, he could get to 800 kilos and all of a sudden be on the podium as a 74?
Yeah, I think so. I think for a 66, I watch few YouTube videos from Pana. He is cutting from 69 with sauna. This is the 3 kilos and half only with sauna, without water cutting. That's the only
Mm.
information what I have. But this is the very big cut before stepping on the scale at the same day at the meet, and I think the body weight can't respond very good post weight in ins, and can rehydration better, I think. But in general, for Pana, I think is for a 74. He need to gain 5 kilos or six, something like that. He's very. Uh, it's not impossible to total more than 800, but that is the path. I think you need to eat. The powerlifting, it's not created for people who down weight class for shell. I think shell is the different person.
Mm.
But but in general, in my opinion, if I need to change my weight class, I need to go up 105. If I need to progress more or build muscle mass, increase production in my powerlifting career, something like that, I need to go up.
Yeah, you know, obviously Penna, an alternate to Sheffield, and if he gets into Sheffield for whatever reason, he'll go 66, I believe, because he wants to go head to head with Kasim Sen in a rematch. Shell's coming down. However, and he's going to World Games, but at some point, to both your gentlemen's, you know, it, at some point, if he says, because he's still in his 20s, I've already won the world championship twice as a 66. I've already done big things and been to Sheffield and all these sensational battles. We're never going to forget his 66-kilo career. But if at some point he decides around 30 years old, he's like, you know what? I'm pushing all my chips in the middle. I'm going all in at 74. Let's just see how big and strong I get. Let's just see. I wonder what we get out of Ben. I wonder if we get 800 kilos and all of a sudden he's on the podium. And to Kedric's point, facing Perkins is daunting. But facing Shell at 66 also sounds daunting, right? Both of them suck. That sucks. Either way you go, it's going to be tough. It's not an easy job. So you could face one where you feel depleted and you're not eating a lot, or you could face another where you're as big and strong as you've ever been in your life. And he's got no regrets at 66. He's a two-time world champion. It's not like he's leaving like, oh, I coulda, woulda, shoulda. What if I did this? What if I did that? My friend, you did a lot.
Yep.
I wonder. I wonder
Yeah.
what happens in the future.
No matter what you did, but it's time to move up.
Yeah, we'll
I
see.
think
We'll have
I think what
go ahead,
one
Kedrick.
important point you mentioned is that, you know, how would you rather how would you rather train, you know? Uh, and I think it's easy for us. I mean, it's easy to sit down and speculate that, oh yeah, like Perkins, like you never like, it's daunting to beat Perkins, right? But the fact of the matter is that we know that Pana being a 66, it's kind of like he has spent almost every like all the resource at that weight class already. Your newbie gains at 66, being this lean, optimizing your your calories to help you stay at this weight, the amount of steps you have to take, the amount of training you have to do, the amount of volume you can recover from. You're already exhausting a lot of all of this, right? And the potentially the injuries that you have to go through, right? And then at the end of the day, uh, would you at the start you may lose to Perk or whoever's in the 74 spot, but you create opportunities, you create new resources, you create ability to eat more, right? And I think the most important thing is that your ability to train in a healthier state, right? Not feeling injuries as frequently. We know Pana deal with injuries as well. I think injuries is not uncommon, right, for lifters. But if you move up a weight class, perhaps you don't have to deal with injuries as frequent. Maybe that makes training more enjoyable, right? And if training is more enjoyable and you can do it more consistently, your progress might go up, right? And the fact of the matter is this: we also say, oh, it's daunting to face Perkins, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, who knows how long someone will be in the sport for? Like
Right.
Perkins could just be so so dominant that maybe 2025 or 2026 would be uh Perks would just say, oh, I'm gonna retire, I want to do something else, right? uh I want to have children, and maybe when I have children, I won't be able to uh train as hard, and I've done what I need to do, right? I'm happy, right? And I can leave. And the fact of the matter is that people will say, oh, you Perkins is the goat, whatever, right? But the fact is that Perkins and Taylor has never faced off one for one another. That is the battle that we will probably never be able to see, right? And I don't want to claim who is better than the other, because obviously Perkins is totally more. But like I said, that's also saying that like Usain Bolt is better than
Not even really.
objectively he's better than the sprinter back in the day. But like I said, the times is different, and the resources that you have uh to you is very different. So I can't say that it's exactly the same just because you're in the same weight class, right? So it's like it might not, like I said, the ability for Panat or whoever that's moving up weight class to be world champion in the next weight class. I don't think it's there. I don't think it's completely cut off just because there's someone who is so dominant in that weight class.
You brought up Taylor. We brought him up a couple times here. Moved up to 83. What do you attribute this to? Is it being able to eat to help him be healthy in terms of recovery? Obviously, food is energy, gas in the tank. Um, what is it, do you think? Because he said he feels so much better as an 83. He had said previously that he wished he had done it sooner. What are your thoughts on this, Kedric? Because I know you were part of that plan to help him bulk to 83. And I'll tell you what, he looked like he had a lot more in the tank on his 830. I'm glad he didn't go too crazy because just, when you're coming off of injuries like that, you're going to be a stitch gun shy to go too crazy. Like just simmer down, get a good total, get excited, good. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like I said, it creates new opportunities, right? I think moving up a weight class and the sheer ability that you can train being in a relatively healthy state with lower injury risk, that's huge. At the end of the day, when you're at such a high level, right? Uh, you are basically just stacking the chips. Every training session you go into, you're just trying to do slightly better. You know, and the thing that would probably, besides lifestyle factors, and maybe sometimes occasionally, if you have a bad sleep, or if because of your newborn child, and or if you fall sick, the thing that would impact you the most is training pain, with pain or without pain. To a certain extent, everybody would have to deal with pain during training. But if you do that day in, day out, time again, you get associated with that pain, and training just doesn't become as enjoyable anymore. And Taylor's post right now, he's not, I mean, he's still lifting quite a fair amount of weight. But if you look at the way he structures his Instagram caption, it's like, I've never enjoyed training this much in a long time. I think that's huge, you know, to enjoy your training because you don't have to train with being in a state of being in pain. And I think at the end of the day, Taylor, perhaps he felt like, oh, I still have something to prove in the 74s. I still have something to prove in the 66. I still have something to prove in the 93. We always think that we have something to prove. But sometimes the sheer fact is that, the sun rises and sets in the same place. And sometimes you just, even though you're trying to prove that that is not the case, you you cannot. just because of your lifestyle, all right. When I spoke to Taylor, I said that you need to set down your non-negotiables. What are three non-negotiables that you have? And I know that Owen would be one of them, right? Because Taylor speaks about his son a lot. And I think that if you the fact of the matter is that if you sacrifice on your non-negotiables and you compromise on that, every time you go into training, you'll be thinking about, am I taking away from my non-negotiables? And that itself will make training something that is not as enjoyable, and it's more of like something that eats into your life rather than something that complements your life. So when he moved up to the weight class, not only does he have the calories to help him to complement his life, but he releases, he creates more room for him to also be, I don't have to be so strict, all the time because I'm recovering better, right? And then maybe, I can spend more time with Owen, things like this. So, and I just told Taylor, I said, based on the non-negotiables that you set for yourself, I'm not saying that I'm not going to set it for you. I said, do you think moving up or staying at 74, which one would complement your non-negotiables better? And then obviously he said, made the decision that moving up to a weight class allows him to not compromise on his non-negotiables. And therefore, that allowed him to enjoy more in terms of his training. And obviously the added calories and all that. But I think that the mindset that you go in with, it's like, I'm doing everything right in my family. I'm doing everything right. I'm meeting all my non-negotiables. I'm taking care of my wife, my child, my work, and I don't feel like tired all the time at my work just because I can't, now I have more energy to eat. You go in with that mindset and you just feel like, you know, uh, you feel like you're gonna dominate, right? And I think that reflects a lot as well in the psyche that you have going into uh competing at a high level. And like I said, I've never competed at a high level. Probably never would. Uh, so all I'm saying is just speculation on what I've observed, and obviously the things that I've heard people say, and some of maybe the pop psychology articles I read online when I try to think I'm a little bit smart, and I like to use Google or Chat GPT to and ask them some questions. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my thought process.
What do you think about when you hear about changing weight classes and how much it can change your career? Have you ever thought about moving to 105? It's a big jump. I mean, 12 kilos is a lot. Your whole body changes. But Anatoly did it. Ashton Rouska did it. And look at those two right now. They're at the top of the 105s. What are your thoughts on that? You think you're going to stay 93 for the foreseeable future? Do you think you'll ever move to 105?
I think I will stay. I will stay. I will, if my training is enjoyable, have a uh, have a moment for enjoyment the process, like a meet prep, and I don't have any injuries because the injuries is important. If I'm injured most of the time in the year, it's not a big deal to stay the 93. But for now, it's pretty good, I think.
You're
But for future, and for progress, like what I said, powerlifting it's not created for the always cutting. It's You need to create muscle mass. This is the for eating calorie surplus, and that is the time for moving and create new opportunity, like Kedric said.
yeah, I mean, at some point, it's tempting just to say at one point in your career, let me see how much weight I could lift if I go as big as possible. Well, just what happens, just one time. Let me see what that looks like. But
What is my body weight the highest?
yeah, like if you ever, it's tempting to just tell yourself to ask yourself, what happens if I just do 1 year bulk and get as big as possible?
Yeah,
How much can I lift just to see like how big is my total?
yeah,
Even
yeah.
even just to like while you're in your prime, just so when you look back, you
We have
know your biggest possible total and the biggest possible you. You know, I mean, you don't want to go crazy and become a 120, but but it's it'd be
this is
interesting to see.
so we have conversation with Kedric soon, before 3 weeks, something like that. It's a little bit interesting for me to see how I my body feeling at 100 kilos or close to the 105. Will be cool to see how my body responds. But yeah, we see.
You got work. You got work to do at 93 still.
Yep,
Yeah,
unfinished job.
that's right. You got to finish that job. Yeah, yeah, I agree. You know, and talking about Kedrick, you're talking about what might happen with Penn if he to bulk up. You know, I was thinking, you look at Joe Bornstein, he was in the 75 kilo because he's USAPL. He moved up to 83 in holy moly. His total is it's insane. Where
Yeah,
sometimes guys are killing themselves to make weight without knowing it. And when they finally decide, what the hell, let's see what happens, boom. So who knows? I don't want to belabor this one topic with Penna, but at
I
some
think
point I think we're gonna find out.
I think for the international athletes, Kedrick we can say the most people wanna cutting. I think this is the wrong, the wrong path for progress. They wanna see the other athletes cutting all the time and wanna build more IPF points, something like that, or more competitive, and forget about the enjoyness, forget about the new opportunity for a new muscle mass, uh, to bring new level for a physique or mentally.
And it depends. It's a tough one because kind of like Kedrick said, if you're a guy like Shell, you might not gain a lot from going up. But if you're a guy like Joe Bornstein, you gain a lot. It kind of depends on you gotta keep all that into perspective. I want to ask you, gentlemen, what do you feel about when you look at the Americans? Who's the biggest threat? I mean, Kendrick gave a lot of great points. In terms of meeting the standard, that's something big. Now, all of these guys have been international from Heiko to Petrie to Gavin multiple times, from Sheffield to Worlds to, North Americans to whatever. But Keiko's battle test, all these guys are battle tested. Actually, this is such a good battle. What do you think when you look at this?
I think Kaiko is the most experienced guy, who is the most frequency guy, who is 1949. But Pete, uh, like Kedrick say, it's lower body weight. He always have a chance to build more muscle mass and build more total. I think Gavin, if he like a little bit cutting weight for a 95, 96 kilos and easy cut from 93 will be very good battle for these three people. Like my favorite top three is Kaiko, Pete, and Gavin.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited Keiko's back. Um, I wonder, do you think, Emil, Keiko is the 93 with the best resume so far?
Yeah, I think he is the most consistent guy. 949.
What do you think, Hedrick? Does he have the best resume so far we've seen as a 93?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it depends how you want to categorize what's the best, right? Like obviously going 9 for 9 is great, but if you go 9 for 9 in total 500, that's 9 for 9 doesn't really mean much. I'm not saying that 9 for 9 isn't important when the competition is tight. You know, uh, I think Matt Gary or the TSG or someone put out stats that the chances of you winning increase like 30+% if you go 9 for 9 or something like that, right? I can't remember the exact figure on top of my head, but like I said, uh, Kaiko is definitely won the most world championships. That itself should be a celebrated fact. But ever since, like I said, we can also make an argument that uh Gustav has slayed the king. And he has been in the sport long for very very long and outlasting anyone else. You can say Emil is the new contender, and ever since he's competed in the national stage, he has never missed the podium. So
Yep.
I don't know who do you want to
Crazy.
how do you want to categorize it? Who's the best, right? Obviously, by objective fact, winning the most world championships would be the best. But if you want to add other factors, then we can always debate on what's an important thing. But if you want to say the person that has won the most world championships, that would be Kaiko. Uh, so yeah,
As soon as Emil starts adding gold medals, everything will change because all of these other medals right now won't feel as sweet until you get the world title. But as soon as you add one gold, now when they look at your medal count and they're like, oh my God, bronze, silver, and all these other medals plus golds, now it means so much more. It'd be like, my friend, I have I've medaled in like by the time your career's over, if you've had like 10 medals at the Worlds and your medal count is ridiculous. You got like four silvers, two bronze, three golds. Now it's different. Now all those other stuff feel greater. But if you don't get the golds yet and you just have the other medals, it's good, but it'll change everything if you add a couple golds, even just two golds, which is like a lot, obviously. But if you add two golds, all those other medals. It's like, oh my God, look at everything he's done. So I was talking to Taylor about, and I was like, Taylor, even when you didn't win, you were grabbing medals. Your medal count is crazy. He was winning medals in 2016. Like at world championships. That's why everyone remembers Taylor's gold medals, but he's got medals at the top for a long time, which adds to his greatness for sure. I want to ask about before we get into a bit of Emil's background and powerlifting in Bulgaria. Before we leave the currents, we got to talk about Kyoto a little bit. Was this a shock to you? Did you expect this? Did you expect more? What did you think about the improvements on the deadlift? I definitely thought it improved. When we get to World Championships, it's going to be he's got to keep that form tight, if not a little tighter. Worlds gets the standard at World Championships is very difficult. What are your thoughts, Kedric, as his coach on that? And then we'll get into the impact of Sheffield, which ironically impacts your other client.
yeah. Uh, I think Kyoto is interesting. First of all, we don't speak the same language at all. Emil said that he'll try his best uh, because his English is not as good. But if you have Kyoto here, Kyoto cannot even say those words in English. So that's how.
And Emil, by the way, you've been doing amazing. I mean, you're totally fine. I remember when I first met you, Emil, in was it 2021?
Yeah.
Like
Sweden.
your English has gotten so. If you've been like doing classes or something, because you've gotten so much better in English, it's crazy. Like you must have been doing classes, right?
Yeah.
Well, he hasn't been doing classes. His classes is basically listening to me talk trash about him.
But so what are your thoughts on Kyoto there, Kendrick? What
Yeah,
are you?
I
Is
think.
this what you expected?
I mean, like I've been working with Kyoto for a while, right? And I think that, like I said, obviously he's borderline. He's very similar to Pana, at borderline being too. I mean, he's probably too heavy for the 66, but borderline still being able to make it. Uh, and I don't know if people on the podcast knows about his background. And he used to work as a firefighter, and uh, he works 24-hour shifts. What I mean by 24-hour shifts, it means that he'll work 24 hours on, 24 hours off. So it's like one whole day. Maybe he has some naps in the sleeping, like the fire station or whatever the office is. But basically, that's quite disruptive for training, right? You're basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like, do you push the lifter hard on the day after he's recovered or not? Because if you push the lifter hard, he will not be able to recover the next day because he's not going to sleep for the next 24 hours. So the adaptations is not ideal. Prior to this year's Worlds, he stopped firefighting. I think 3 months leading into Worlds. I can't actually remember the exact duration, so don't quote me on that. But it was a short period of time, and obviously, we didn't really do what we wanted. Right, he was always dealing with injuries, and that has obviously impacted him. His performance is very, very like sporadic. A good performance is very sporadic, right? It fluctuates a lot depending on how well he's rested. So going into Worlds, obviously we wanted to at least go on the podium to actually earn a spot for the World Games, right? Unfortunately he missed out on everything because he placed fifth, right? Uh, and obviously putting if he pulled his second deadlift, right, he would have gotten the podium. Uh, and I think that definitely hit him hard, right? And he has missed out on the podium, missed out on the World Championships because of his deadlift, right? Time and time again. Sheffield as well, right? If you remember this year's Sheffield, if he were to got his 302.5, which he lost balance, he would have gotten third at Sheffield, right? Going into Sheffield, uh, he was nominated, projected first based on the total percentage. And I think it like flipped between he and Jesus, but obviously everything fell apart after the bench for Jesus, and after when Kyoda only got one deadlift, everything kind of like fell apart for him as well. But I think that made him realize that there's something that we needed to fix, and now that his lifestyle is actually much more conducive towards training adaptations and recovery, I think he's finally able to put up a performance that right now is the biggest 66 performance ever, right? Because he broke the world record. He totaled 725. Obviously, Chell and Kasim San, whatever they do in Sheffield, would uh, most likely go beyond that. But I think for him going into this meet, we weren't really thinking about the world record total because all we wanted to was to try our best to win. He wanted to win the best lifter for Asians to earn a wildcard spot to uh, the World Games. The plan going into the meet was try to total 740, right? The goal was 250, 182.5, and 308, right? So 308 is basically just trying to break the deadlift world record. So he totaled 247.5 on the squat, so 2.5 less. I don't know if you watched the meet, the replay, 170. He opened at 170, and he had like a sticking point on his opener, right? But he locked it out. To my eye, when I watched the replay, there was no downward movement, but all three ref gave a blue light, which indicates downward movement. So he only went up 2.5, and then obviously he went up 5. 170, 7.5 was relatively easy. I would say that 180 was definitely there. 182.5, he will probably grind it, but I've seen Kyoda grind benches before, so I would say that that's a 50-50 chance. So he already lost 7.5 kilos going in, which means the best he could total if it hit 308 was 733. Going into that, his deadlift opener was set as 285, so the plan was jumping 285, 300, 308. If I was handling him on midday, I would have lowered his opener and then hit the world record on his second. But then he increased his opener and hit the world record on his opener. When I saw the increase, I was like, oh man, like, it's the WR or the ER, right? WR is the world record, right? ER is the emergency room because you bomb out, right? But it's a good thing he at least got his opener and he at least got the world record, 712.5. And then he went to 300. I would say that the 300, his knee was one of his knee was a bit soft. But I could say maybe whatever bad refing he got from the refs, and this is not to call out the refs because I only have one perspective from the screen, that gave him all blue lights for his bench. Maybe karma allowed him to get that 300 on the deadlift. But personally, I would say that based on everything that has gone that day, his top end would probably be 302.5, 305. And if he wanted the biggest total, excuse me, biggest total that will put him in position for the World Game spot, what I've done, I would probably just drop his opener to 282.5, make a 15 kilo jump to 297.5, and then maybe take 302 or 305 and just let the deadlift world record be. Because you're going to hit 308 deadlift, but we know that Kasim San and Chell would obliterate that soon. And if your primary goal is to go into the World Games, you probably want the biggest total, right, to set you up for best lifter. So while 725 is great, and I think that I'm happy to see him be able, first of all, to actually beat his PR. His PR was 712.5, right, going into Malta. So other than Japanese nationals, he has never done anything more than that. All his other meets has been lower. right? And to finally beat his PR by 25 kilos on an international stage, getting the world record, that's great. But Kyoda being Kyoda, he's not satisfied because he feel like it was also the very typical Japanese slash Asian mindset and culture where I didn't really hit my goals, therefore I failed, right? And I think people would, I think it's great for him, but I don't know whether people know how much like sacrifice he made. I don't know if you noticed this, but Kyoda wasn't wearing, for his squad, he wasn't wearing an SBD singlet, right? And he wasn't wearing SBD knee sleeves. So like Kyoda really, really wanted the World Game spot, and not being on the podium at Worlds really like devastated him. When I spoke to him at uh when I spoke to him after Sheffield and World Games, he said that if I don't get a World Game spot, I'm not sure if I'll continue powerlifting. Uh, so
Oh,
he really,
really?
yeah, so he really gave everything because he wanted to go so hard into actually getting that. He actually did not renew his SBD contract, so he could wear like the stiffer knee sleeves. So I think he was wearing the A7, the Rigor Mortis. People can argue about it whether that actually helps the squat more, how much you get out of it. Some people will say yes, some people will say no. But I think that my role as a coach is not to tell him no, right? Because I'm not his manager. I don't manage your SBD sponsorship, right? And if he believes that knee sleeves would give him a 2.5 kilos uh to 5 kilos, I'm not gonna tell him no, because that would sort of like, I cannot really communicate with him normally. So to tell him no in something that he has to translate, it might not be good for our coaching relationship, and then he might not trust the process. So like he actually sacrificed his SBD sponsorship to basically get 2.5, potentially 5 kilos more just on the squat. That's how much he wanted the spot, right? And like I highlight this kind of stuff because 725 is great, right? But I think that what the lifter puts in, what the lifter sacrifices, the amount of sacrifice someone is willing to make, and some may actually argue that it's not rational and it's dumb. But who am I to judge, right? I'm not in that position. You don't know I don't know what he has gone through. He has been on the podium in the conversation time and time again, failed time and time again, right? And I think for him to see that outcome, breaking the world record, currently being the highest total as a 66 kilo lifter, even though it might be really short lived, I think that would give him some form of hope that he can stay on in the sport, because he clearly is talented, right? He's clearly a talented lifter. And to see someone just leave the sport like that because they feel like they didn't achieve what they felt like they could, that is quite disheartening, because you obviously want the sport to grow. And he's a big inspiration for the Japanese lifter. I don't know whether you watch a live stream, but if you go on the live stream of the chat and you watch the replay, all like the chats are all in Japanese. It's like all
Really?
Japanese text. Yeah, like it was like really like the support for him is immense. So I think he's doing something good for the community as a whole in Japan. And to see someone like him of his caliber leave just because he feel like he didn't live up to the standards, and potentially, like I said, this culture thing, him being really strict on himself at 27 years old. Kyoda is also only 27 years old, and he said like, I'm gonna stop powerlifting. Like that itself is a big loss to the sport. So I think whatever he did was great. If I were to do it differently, if I were to handle him, I would probably select the attempts for his deadlift slightly different. I can't say for sure that he would probably hit 302 or 305, but I'll probably say it would set himself up better. Because regardless, if he hit 297.5 on the deadlift for the second, right, and he missed his third, even if it's 302 or 305, he still breaks the world record. It's still 722.5 instead of 725, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't really change things if you want to break the world record, right? And I just told Kyoda as well, I said that it's probably a good idea for you to have better attempt selection. I tried to communicate it to him. I told him on the squat, I said, ideally, you will not RPE 200 your third squat and grind it for 8 seconds, because you need to save some energy for your deadlift. And if you look at his third squat, it was probably one of the easiest third squats you've seen Kyoda done ever, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
Very easy.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that if he would grind his squat, he wouldn't get 300 kilo deadlift. But I think that it's the mindset. You go in with the mindset that I want to basically build the momentum, and not like grind every single rep. Especially if your goal is to hit the biggest total, because sometimes grinding too much actually may take away from that. So yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of the background on my coaching relationship with Kyoda, where what has happened, uh, here, how I feel about it, and I think that hopefully when Chell comes down, he decides to go up to uh the 74 class as well. Because Kyoto can actually bench a lot. We bench 180 for doubles in training, but obviously it was heavier as well, and imagine if he actually moved up, what he can hit for his bench, right? So and Kyoto does quite big cuts as well from 69 to 70, and that's how much we usually cut just because, like I said, he's tall. So that's just the weight that he has to be at. So yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts on everything that has happened with Kyoto.
Is Kyoto going to make it to World Games on a wild card then?
So I think in contention for best lifter is Fan Chunchia, who got fourth, right? Came fourth in Worlds. And the thing with like the IPF, the world record for 66 is so low that whatever Kyoto total today, Fan Chunchia's total at Worlds already uh beat already beat Kyoto's GL points today. Yeah, so Kyoto had a total 730 or more to actually put him in the
Wow.
spot. But who knows what will happen, right? Because I mean, Fantucha could total less. We don't really know. He could total way more. And like I said, if Kyoto is the second best lifter, if Fantucha rejects his World Game spot for whatever reason, I don't know whether there's also like a geopolitical reason because obviously he lives for Taiwan, right? And World Games in China. Who knows, right?
Oh
Kyoto might get the
yeah,
spot.
didn't even know that. Or
Yeah,
didn't even
like
think about that.
yeah, anything can happen. So I told him just don't give up hope. I don't want to see you quit powerlifting. So and I'm trying to encourage him. I said like you've made this progress. You've made this progress and you still have things you can work on. It's not like your form is like perfect, everything's like clean. All right. It's not like everything was like good and this is the best you have done. It's like you still have room to grow. And like I said, hopefully that message goes through to him and he sees that as an opportunity for improvement instead of like I'm done with powerlifting. Because like I said, the sport would lose a big yeah, the sport powerlifting in Japan would lose a big name
Their
if he
biggest name.
leaves. Yeah.
That is talk about all in. If I don't go to World Games, I quit. 27, and you think of everything we talked about with Gustav. It's like, Kyoto, if you stay, you might end up a world champion at some point. To leave before that at 27, don't leave yet. And I'll tell you what, that session of 66s at Worlds was amazing. And we got the podium back. So they'll battle again at World Games. Great. But Kyoto back, Kyoto, even though he was off the podium, was one of the most noteworthy guys because he's so charismatic, so strong. Like if I find out Kyoto's at World Games, I mean that'll be an amazing session to watch. The only thing will
Yeah.
be Shell won't be in there, and that's a pretty big shadow. Once he does what we think he's going to do at Sheffield and what he might do at Worlds, he casts a pretty big shadow now at 66s. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
We'll
But
have to
like I
see.
said, going all in, right? I said like imagine like canceling the biggest sponsorship you ever had in your life just to
That's
get like
crazy.
potentially 2.5 to 5 kilos. You know,
Yeah, if
uh,
maybe not. Maybe that's just in his head. I mean, sometimes
yeah,
if it is in your head,
exactly.
though, it's the old placebo effect, though. Sometimes you tell yourself, like, whatever. If you tell you will it to be true, it is what it
Yeah,
is. I don't know. But yeah, I've never heard of someone this far in for World Games in particular. It means a lot to him. Who knows? Who knows,
yep.
man? He's got the World Championships, though. But we'll see. Um, Emil, I want to ask you, what is the status of powerlifting in Bulgaria right now?
Powerlifting in Bulgaria is very small community and still growing. I can see more and more young lifters involved. We recently had our biggest meet in local history, over 180 people. So we usually have 200 lifters per year, something like that. We still need to grow more to adapt and have better standards, but things are going in good direction. Even this year, we had a very good live stream. This is watched over 1,000 people. So
Nice.
that is good. and I hope this is trend to continue. We still need more volunteers and more lifters. There are not many places for people to train. That's the biggest issue. But I see they are able to find a way to train no matter of what.
What are the big sports that are popular in Bulgaria?
I think for now is football, volleyball, basketball, something like that. Um, we we have weightlifters
Yeah.
like Carlos Nassar. Did you know him?
Okay. So I don't know a lot of the actual Olympic weightlifters, but I do know some of the nations that are better at Olympic weightlifting, and Bulgaria is one of them, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the if you hear the Bulgarian strength system, like
Yeah.
before 30
Yeah,
years
that's
old,
famous. There's like programs on Bulgarian strength systems. Yeah, that's right.
yeah, I don't know very much for this program, but the former is Ivan Abadiev. He's the hardcore coach. They have 3 workouts per day, every day, and they have max out almost every day, something like that, and have 6 to 7 movements, which
Hmm.
is small part of program. They only push it, and yeah, they have a document the film. You can check it in the YouTube. It's very interesting because no one almost survived this program despite the age. Younger people can't hold it that volume and intensity, and very small community have a successful training career without injuries or something like that. It's very hardcore.
Strength sports is big though. So like is strength sports big in Bulgaria? Like gym and weightlifting? Obviously Olympic weightlifting is.
I think for weightlifting is lower than powerlifting because
Oh, really?
not so much in the gyms or something like
Mm.
that. But maybe it's like very close. But I think for the most the gym is commercial. That's
Mm.
because most of the normal people training. But for the weightlifting and powerliftings, I think weightlifters have more gyms. Yeah, powerlifting is lower for sure because in the Bulgaria we have only three gyms in powerlifting in the whole Bulgaria. For weightlifting, have definitely more. This is my mistake before last.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's if one strength sport is popular, it helps the other strength sport to grow. As long as people are in the gym with a barbell, it's easier to bring them over. It's an easier transition. Or if you're in the gym, commercial gym, you might be bench pressing already. You might
Yep.
be squatting already. So
Yep.
then they just need to find you on Sheffield, World Championships, World Games, whatever. They see you and they're like, oh, I bench press, I squat, easier to bring them over. Have you seen, has the sport of powerlifting grown in the last few years since you've been involved?
Yep. Definitely. I will try my best to give free more information or helping people to find right choices for training or something like that. Just involving more people, younger people in the sport in Bulgaria, and definitely increase it each year.
And how did you find powerlifting?
Uh, I found powerlifting before 11 years. That's the time I was doing calisthenics. Calisthenics is body weight movements like a dips, pull up, push up, something like that. And decided to try strength training or a little bit like just commercial gym. Went to the local gym in my hometown. There is a powerlifting coach. It's the only one I know and this day in my town. So I did the competition, equipped for 6 weeks, try to squat, bench, deadlifts coming from calisthenics. it's the form is pretty bad, but decided to do it. But then I decided to continue with bodybuilding because I need to more muscle mass. I was around 70 kilos, something like 71 kilos body weight. I was doing bodybuilding for 5 to 6 years and had competitions back then. I won first place at the Open Classic Bodybuilding. And later on, when I started off season, I decided to put more work for the strength training, especially for powerlifting. Then things started to click it. 1 year later, after I started doing powerlifting focused training, I was at the international stage.
What year was that?
Uh, it's the, I think, Lithuania 20, 2019.
Okay.
So uh, I just did the junior world records for the bench press, 230 kilos and half. Yeah, so that's it. And placed the third overall.
And how did you end up finding Kedric?
So somewhere, but the first
He saw
time.
my picture with the toothbrush.
Is that right? I got you a
uh,
lot of clients, didn't it,
so,
sir?
so I can say my backstory, then I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
say Kedric,
yeah, yeah.
just because it's the more for South Africa before 2 years after the wars. I was angry because I have lost from Chance Mitchell from 1 kilo, and I continued to push my training. Then we started to look different options with my previous coach, but we couldn't find anything working. This is impact my squat. I was very triggered about that. I was not able to understand my body, my emotion that way this time, and it was a big stopper for me to train. I think this reflects during the European that year when I bombed out on the squats. I was squatting lower frequency, probably 1 time per week. It was my first bomb out, and mentally, didn't help me so much when I bombed out. My motivation is gone. I was thinking to quit. It is very hard. And few weeks later, at the 1st January, I found out I was invited for the Sheffield
Hmm.
2023, and I had literally no time for prep. We have 6 or 7 weeks, so I was both excited and stressed, but give me literal cyber leaning just for a hope I can uh, I can give me back motivation to train or something like that.
Hmm.
So this is the time when I met Kedric. Somewhere between the Europeans and the invite for Sheffield, I start with Kedric. Firstly, I had observation on his work because he started to work with Asia before me. This is my girlfriend earlier, and say that he's dedicated. I see he's dedicated coach and very good what he doing. So I had the opportunity to try with him. I had to talk with my previous coach, and he says, "Okay, let's try to with another coach." We're still friends with my previous coach, and I appreciate the time I worked with him. And yes, after this journey with Kedric, we started, and we had very short prep for a Sheffield, where I was injured and depressed. But we have small time to try few things which is worth it, because for a Sheffield I finish with pain free. That's the biggest win.
And ever since then, you've done some massive improvements. You know, you're from 2021 Worlds to now. You know, you've got some big improvements on your total. I think you were 847 at 2021 Worlds and took a bronze medal. Is that right?
Uh, 837, I think.
Was it 37? Oh,
Yeah.
you had previously hit 847.
Uh,
Let me pull this up. Let
Let
me
me
take a
check.
little look here.
I don't. I,
Okay. So 2021. Yeah, 837. You're right.
yeah, yeah.
And
I
then the
just.
following worlds, holy moly, you did 877.5.
Yep.
So you put on 40 kilos from one world championship to another.
Yep. And I have pretty much more left in the tank for a deadlift. Just with my coach, he's not handling with me, and my girlfriend helped me, the other side, the backstage, and she didn't see the display, and we put whatever it takes, just what is more conservative. The weight is 342 and half, and
Hmm.
very easy. I have for more, but after that, for a chance for losing for 1 kilo, I feel pretty bad for that.
Yeah, that was a really good year as well and a good era. The 93s are always good. The 93s are always a hot division. I don't know what do you think is the hottest division right now in powerlifting?
I think it's 83 and 93. The past 2 or 3 years, more, maybe more.
Yeah, 93s are always number one. 83 now, maybe. 83 now looks like it. I mean,
Now it's more hot.
yeah, yeah, I'd agree about that. But yeah, it's sensational. What do you think, Kedric? Is it the 93? 66s are good. The problem is if Shell does 800, he'll be way ahead by a lot of kilos. 83s, it's flip a coin. I'm not entirely sure unless Joey B emerges. I'm not sure. What do you think, Kedric?
Yeah, I think definitely the 93s has always been hotly contested. I think when it comes to powerlifting, if you have more competitors with moving absolute load, that's great. Like I think that even if you have like 459s, I mean, I know Ryan, you're doing your best trying to hype up the 59 kilo weight class, but
I'm a best playboy.
let's face it, it's gonna be like Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. You know, uh, uh, and at the end of
Man, you saved your best soundbite for 2 hours in.
I had to say something, right? Like you can't just let me
Hey,
just
you produce the sound bites, man. I ain't mad at all. But that was
yeah.
Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. That's Wasker versus Feddo. You think it'll be Tyson Jake Paul?
I mean, I something like that. But to say who's Tyson and who's Jake, I don't want to.
It's clear. So hang on, let me ask you real quick. Let me ask you quick because this is interesting. Do because Fedoshenko at the Asian Championship just did 625, was it? I think he did 625.
Yep.
And previous best was 670. And he missed a couple lifts. It wasn't like he didn't do 625 easy with a lot left. And so he's cruising. He did 625 missing lifts and having to retake the lifts and etc. So I don't know if he's past his best and he's declining or if he's dealing. I've heard he was dealing with injuries. So maybe he's still got a big 650, 660 total in him, but he's just not, he's injured, so he can't show it on the day, but he will by the time he faces off with Waskar. I don't know. But he might be past his prime. And Waskar's in his 20s, which would mean that's exactly what Jake Paul, young guy in his 20s, taking out these old legends, right? I don't know. Dude, that's an amazing freaking comparison. It might be a little early to say he's Paul Tyson, but it's interesting. What do you think, Kendrick? Do you think Feddo's Who do you think is the favorite if Waskar and Fedor faced each other?
I mean, at the end of the day, the sheer fact that Sergey has been competing since what 2002, right? Like Waska
22 years,
couldn't,
man.
yeah. And how was Waska?
He's in mid 20s. I don't know exactly. I think he's around
Yeah,
25,
I think
26.
it's I think it's 27.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Just the same years like me.
yeah. So Waska couldn't even lift a weight when Sergey started competing. You know, and that is when Sergey started competing, not when Sergey started lifting. I think when Sergey started lifting and knowing how, don't want to stereotype, don't want to assume, but Russian lifting culture is obviously, but like I said, Bulgarian culture isn't too far away from Russia, right? Part of used to be part of the Soviets, so you probably start lifting at a young age. When Sergey started lifting, Waska might not even exist yet. That's how crazy. It's the same thing with Tyson and Paul, right? When
Hmm.
Tyson first won his medal, right? How old was Paul? Like something,
He wasn't
like
alive either.
probably yeah, like
Mike Tyson was
something
champion at 20 years old. Mike Tyson was only 20 when he won the title. That's
yeah,
1988 or
yeah.
86, sorry. Yeah, so
So
Jake Paul didn't exist.
yeah, so I think at the end of the day, right? One another thing as well, tying back, just tying the themes up together. Uh, Sergey has been 59 for ages. You know, the resources that he has tapped at that weight class would start to max out, especially when you are at a certain age. So I think at the end of the day, we just have to see uh whether his time is up. It's nice I think it's good for the sport, right? But in terms of the most exciting weight classes, you know, and I didn't bring this up just to this Waska or Sergey, because I think it's nice to see competition in any weight class. But if we're drawing comparisons, right, uh, it is always more exciting to see battles when the weight lifted is heavier. That's also and I'm not trying to say anything about SBD or their selection and not giving Jessica Espinal, uh, the wild card. But the fact of the matter is that the absolute load being lifted at a 47 kilo weight class is much smaller than a 63. You know, so it's more
Yeah,
exciting
for
to see
sure.
a battle when the weight is actually heavier. When you factor in the fact that Sheffield is an event where you want to see the most weight being moved, right? It's not to. It's very different from winning the world championship at 47 by half a kilo. You want to see the most weight being moved because that is what the crowd wants. So if we were to talk about the most weight being moved and the most like tight competition, I would definitely say it's the 83 and the 93s, right? It's the intersection of the combination of the sheer amount of lifters in that weight class and the sheer weight being moved. Those are the two weight classes that are probably the hottest right now, at least in the men's. Obviously the females, you have the 63s, right? Uh, I think that's yeah. I think the 63s is pretty much it now, especially with, I mean, because Agada's pretty dominant, right? So the 63s is probably the hottest weight class, just because, like I said, is that intersection where you're in the middle of the weight class, which means if you're in the middle of the weight class, it's largely that the pool of lifters is bigger, right? Just because of the average, the bell curves, more people are in the 63 kilo weight classes, and the weight that's being lifted. Plus, it's also more relatable. You know, like to I can relate to someone being a 93 lifting this amount of weight because most average males would be around that weight, right? Average, at least, average European males would be around that weight, right? And most average females would be somewhere around that weight as well, right? 63s, 69s. So it's more relatable. So, but when you go to the heavier weight class, you don't have to relate because all you just see is that I just want to see the most weight being moved, right? That's
Mm.
why when we look at weightlifting, right, we look at Lasha, he's just like lifting a bunch of weight above his head, and nobody cares about his weight. He could be 150 kilos, 170 kilos, 180 kilos in terms of his body weight, but we don't really care. We cannot relate to that because after a certain point, you stop relating to someone at that weight class, but all you're focused on is just at that weight. But if you can relate to the weight class and you can see the most weight being moved at that weight class, and you also have the tightest battle, that makes the weight class the hottest division. Uh, yeah, at least that's in my amateur assessment. I'm not a sports pundit, so I cannot say whether all of these like categories I give it is objective, but at least that's what I think the hottest divisions are and the potential reasons why. Like I said, how many of you can relate being 59 or 47 kilos? Probably not a lot of lifters, you know. So
Yeah, like the 63s are totaling roughly 120 kilos more. That's than the 47s, to your point. That's a substantial difference. So even if you're in the general population and you're scrolling through Instagram and some of these lifts start popping up, when you see Leah Bavois shifting, over a 400 pounds for reps on squat, you'll have big jack dudes at the gym who think 4 plates aside for reps on a squat is big, and they're proud of that, and they should be. That is strong, but they can still look at Leah Bavois doing it and be like, oh my god, it definitely strikes a chord. And there's 363s in that Sheffield class, whereas Jessica versus Turbo Tiff, there would only be the two of them head to head, a good head to head nonetheless. But 363s, there's nothing quite like a three-way battle when you could flip a coin to all three. That's rare at this height. And they're not just three of them. One's the open world champ, the other's the junior world champ, the other's the former world champ and former world record holder. So you got like three all stars head to head. That's the perfect storm. So that's always pretty cool. In terms of another women's weight class that's getting to that point, 57s got Jad Jacob, Natalie Richards, who both have beaten each other, and Serenaldi of Italy just dropped down. And Serenaldi head to head against Jad Jacob, they both totaled the same. Sarah had the lighter body weight at girl power. She's right in the mix. She's right there with those ladies. She did 515. So she's now it's become international. Italy, France, and America. And Italy in the women's division is starting to become a force where you got a 57 in Aldi, a 63 in Chiara, and of course Corolla Gar in the 69s, who's the world champion. So I don't know. Italy's on the rise, and in terms of what you said about Agata, Agata's a monster. Agata's a monster. Wherever she goes, she's a problem. And she's talking about 2026. She's going 84. And previously, it was like, oh, be careful. That's Amanda Lawrence. But now that she did 627, and she did 627 at like 71 kilos body weight. Imagine she's 80. She doesn't even to fill out 84. Imagine she's 80 kilos. She doesn't need a lot more kilos on her. 627. She's young. So, when you're talking about maxing out gains, she hasn't maxed out. Like, she's still like 21. She hasn't even maxed out her like newbie gains, so to speak, like filled out in terms of her physical peak. She hasn't maxed out her body size because she hasn't filled out 80. She probably won't fill out 84, but filled out as big as she wants to be. There's a lot of stuff that she can max out still. I wasn't convinced that her versus Amanda was a real possibility until she hit 627 at 71 kilo body weight. Now I'm like, okay, that this is real. This is real. And then I was talking to Eric Helms and them. They were on a podcast, and he was like, "Do you realize Amanda's total has only progressed 1 kilo in the past, like however many years? It doesn't mean she can't progress. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying she better start because if that doesn't move again, and if this is her max capacity, now Agatha doesn't have a moving target. She just knows, okay, say less. I know exactly what I got to do. If you stay put and you continue to stay put, I'm going from 627. I know exactly where I need to go. And it's going to be interesting. Now I'm actually it's going to be now I don't want to get too ahead of myself. That's 2026. First, Agatha said she's got the 76 kilo world title. She's going to go 69 at Sheffield again. She might win again. Win the 69 kilo world titles on something she wants. Then she's going to go up. So she'll be the first triple weight class champion ever in powerlifting. And she might do all that by like 25.
yeah, I mean,
25.
like it is
Won the
crazy,
game.
right?
Gable.
Because it it like I said, I think with her being able to, you know, I think she is, a genetic phenom. If you look at some of her siblings as well, right? I think one of her sisters pretty jacked. Uh, you know, uh, she also has basically lifting is a job, right? She trains, she eats, she lifts. She's young, and I think she has a good coach as well, Powell, uh, from Poland, who does her training. Clearly she made improvements, right? Like trying like crazy experimental stuff, like 6 times SBDs, right? I'm not saying that everybody should do that because obviously, like I said, all Agatha do, like lifting is her job. You know, she can do 6 times SBDs, right? But I think that her coach Powell, who's like willing to guide her through that process, because sometimes it's important to, like it's like Kyoda believing that the knee lifts would help, right? If Agatha believes that something like 6 times SBD may potentially help, and if she really wants to do it, my role as a coach is to kind of like make sure it's not too outrageous, but also to guide that process. I think that's how like Powell does it for her, and obviously Powell like, tracks her metrics and all that kind of stuff, right? All these factors combined is like the perfect storm, right? Like the perfect storm where you see in Agatha, and I think the battle with Amanda Lawrence would be great because, like you said, Amanda Lawrence hasn't her total only progressed by 1. But the fact of the matter is that she doesn't need to progress. She can just go in and win it. Maybe now, like I said, competition is great for the sport. Maybe now that Agatha is coming up, Amanda Lawrence will finally start progressing, and then the sport as a whole would rise, and I think that's great. That's great as a whole for the sport, like if Durance didn't win, Worlds, right? And Russ won by a sweep. What is driving Russ to just be better? He probably has because he's in America, so to go to PA nets. But yeah, he'll probably not push it as hard, But obviously now we've seen Russ's training has like skyrocketed a little bit, right? Iron sharpens iron, and I think that's good as a whole for the sport, right? And I love to see that. I love to see Agatha go in, just disrupt everybody's plan, like the Grim Reaper, just like collecting victims one by one. And then obviously she has like floated ideas of like doing untested stuff just because she really wants to see how humanly strong she can get. And who knows what would hold in the future, right? Whether after 25 she decides to change sport, maybe she will do weightlifting and become the next weightlifting champ for Poland at the Olympics. Who knows? Like she's
Can you imagine?
like, yeah, she's like gifted and she has the time and she has the support and the coaching staff. It's like the perfect storm, right? So I think that is just something to anticipate and be excited about. But like you said, let's just not get ahead of ourselves too much. I think the big one for her next would be obviously trying to win Sheffield again.
It'll be exciting. Well, it's crazy. If she goes into weightlifting, oh, buddy, they better be careful. They better be careful. She's gonna do to them what she did to us. She's something else. It's exciting to watch how she's progressed. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate both you guys coming on here. We crushed over 2 hours. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. We should do this again. Hop on here, talk about the latest powerlifting news, talk about what's going on, and we'll run through all your guys' careers. Sheffield have come and gone, and Emil, you're not going nowhere. You got some big goals for 2025. Kedric, you're not going nowhere. You got tons of clients on the go all over the place. So let's touch back up again, fellas. Let's do this again. And good luck with your pursuits and all your training. And for everybody listening, as per usual, please do subscribe, give us high ratings, and until next time, 6-pack Lapadat, 6 up, and we are